your source for everything paranormal. Parax. Throughout the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie Strohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Channeling History. It's Sunday night, and the Parax Radio Network is good enough to sponsor us again. We want to remind you that we are the only show where we speak to the souls that made things happen. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I'll be doing the channeling tonight.
And I'm Connie Strohm, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to our show tonight. I will be the co-host this evening, and I will be asking the questions of our spirit guest. Tonight, we have the honor of interviewing the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. Last week, we channeled the spirit of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a liberal Democrat, so this week we thought it was only fair to give equal time to a conservative Republican past president. As always, we welcome any questions that you submit through the chat room. We do have a list of prepared questions, but we always make an effort to include interesting questions given to us through the chat room. So I will do the best I can.
Okay, and we always try to, as well, give a small disclaimer at this point. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people disagree with some of the things that we speak of tonight. So anyway, we have no idea how our spirit guests are going to answer, so the opinions or statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits and do not necessarily reflect those opinions of our sponsors, Parax Radio Network, or perhaps even ourselves.
All of our previous shows are available on our YouTube channel, that's in the name of Barry Strohm, and Podomatic.com under the name Channeling History, where you can download them or just listen for free. It is also available on Audible, iTunes, Spotify, and most of the other popular platforms. When we begin our channeling tonight, I will ask the questions as usual, and Barry, as usual, will answer the questions in the words of our guest.
Okay, if you've listened to our show, you also know that before we channel, we always say a prayer of protection. There's a lot of evil out there, and we want to make sure that we're protected when we have this channel open to the other side of the veil. So Connie will now say the prayer, and we have a very, very interesting guest, and we will have a lot of questions, I'm sure. So Connie, let's do the prayer and get on with it.
Okay, God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God. Amen. First, I would like to say welcome, Mr. President. It's an honor to have you, and I'm very anxious to hear what you have to say this evening. But would you like to begin with a message?
Absolutely. Connie, did you ever know of a politician that would not begin with a message?
No.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. I listened to your show last week with President Roosevelt. We were actually pretty good friends over here on this side, and I thought it was quite interesting. He did a lot of good things for the country, and I feel that I also accomplished quite a bit for our country. When I became president, there were many, many problems. Many people did not respect our government. They felt that we were weak, and we were suffering from very high interest rates and very high inflation. I think that my presidency had actually had many relationships to those of President Roosevelt. He took over in a very difficult time, and I took over in a very difficult time. I did my best to have the citizens of our country show great respect think that the United States was the greatest country in the world, and that with sound leadership, basically we could accomplish anything. So I want you to know that even though the times may seem a little difficult, strong leadership can once again lead your country in a direction that will allow it to survive for many, many years. So Connie, I know you have many questions, so let's begin.
Okay. Could we start with you telling us about your father?
I actually had very poor beginnings. My father was a shoe salesman. He traveled a lot and never made much money. We would rent places and we would move around as he thought the opportunity to further better himself would come about. He was a good person, but in many ways, he did not have the drive that was necessary to really succeed. But I loved my father, and he was a very good man.
What was your relationship like with your mother?
My mother was a very strong person. She had very strong religious beliefs, and she instilled many of those beliefs in me as a child. As I was entering politics, she played a role. She would actually help make some of our political decisions in the beginning. She was a very good person. I loved her very much, and she did much to help me with my life and my career.
Yeah. What were your greatest academic accomplishments?
I think that's a trick question, Connie. I was never good, but I was never that good academically. I participated in many things. School politics, I was active in sports. I did many, many things in school, but my grades were actually rather average. Even when I went to college, I found that my grades did not improve a whole lot, but I still did remain very active.
Seems to me you got enough education because you were a wonderful president. Tell us about your belief in God.
My mother instilled a very, very strong belief in me that God existed and that God actually controlled what was going to take place in our lives. I always understood that, and throughout my life I prayed to him, I asked him for guidance, and I know that in many instances he did give me strength to do things that I otherwise could not have accomplished.
How did your belief in God affect your governing as president?
I tried to instill a belief in God in as many of the people as I could. It was a time that government was beginning to take was beginning to take God out of the schools. It was a time that many people were very resentful and felt that God was not real or that they did not believe in him. We were having many technological advances during my time, and many of those that were leading the advances used their technology to prove that a God did not exist. I can tell you now that I'm on the other side, that God truly does exist, and that all he wants is for people to get along and to coexist.
Yes. What were your beliefs in racial equality?
I believe very strongly in racial equality. During World War II, I saw that the people of different skin color were treated very differently. They were giving their lives, and they were fighting as heroically as any other white person. I felt deep in my heart that all people were created equal, and I felt that that was God's teachings, and I tried my best to do that and to make situations better for all races.
Okay, when you ran for California governor, you promised to repeal legislation barring housing discrimination. This is in contradiction to your belief in racial equality. Could you explain that, please, sir?
This was a very, very difficult decision for me. I believe very strongly in free markets, and I believed that people had the right to use their property as they saw fit. I also felt very strongly about racial equality. I was very torn with this decision. I think if I had it to do over, I would never have voted as I did. But at the time, I felt that any individual, no matter what your skin color was, you had the right to use your property as you saw fit.
You began your radio career as a radio announcer. How did that lead to a movie career? That's quite a jump.
I think that I was very good as a radio announcer, and there were people out there that were listening. It was very early in movie times. There were many people that were looking in the industry for new blood. I was lucky enough to have been introduced to a couple of the right people, and it worked out that I started with very minor roles and did manage to get a few decent acting roles. I never really achieved the popularity of many of the most important people, but I did achieve enough popularity that it laid a foundation for running for politics and for doing other things than an acting career.
What is your favorite movie?
I think my best role was All the King's Men. It was a good role. I think I did a pretty good job in it, and I would consider that as my favorite movie.
Okay, then one of our listeners would like to know if he were going to watch a Ronald Reagan movie, which one should he watch? I think you just told us that. That's great. You were a member of the Army Reserve. Would you tell us about your military career during World War II?
I had very poor eyesight, so I could not be cleared for a military role. Eventually, the Army took advantage of whatever personal recognition I had, and I worked in doing things trying to raise money through defense bonds, and I assisted with making movies that would help build up the morale of the American people. I did some roles that were militarily oriented, but my career in the military was always in this country.
Okay, after World War II, were you actually an FBI informant?
After World War II, there were many people in the movie industry that believed that socialism, or perhaps even communism, that was taking over the world after World War II, was a better way. In those days, there were many people that hated capitalism. We had just come through a terrible period of depression, and many felt that it was capitalism that was to blame for the terrible time that we had through the 1930s. Many of the people in the industry did think that perhaps socialism or communism would be a better way to go. The FBI came to us and asked if we would be able to identify any of those individuals that they felt were dangerous to United States security. We did supply them with some names. I was always very hesitant because I never felt that I should be the one to determine whether a person was truly a communist or not.
That's understandable. In your early political life, you were a Democrat. What was your opinion of Franklin Roosevelt?
I thought that Franklin was a wonderful president. I thought that he tried to do his best in getting us out of the Depression. He led us through World War II, and he was the only president to be elected for 4 terms. As I said earlier, I still see him over here, and I still am very good friends with him. At the time, I thought he was a superb president, and I still believe it to this day.
So does my 97-year-old mother. Okay, what made you change to Republican?
The Democratic Party moved away from my beliefs. In the beginning, they were quite conservative, but many of the ideas that changed the Great Depression were actually socialistic types of programs. The Democratic Party became more and more liberal. I considered myself a conservative Democrat. As the country turned more to, shall we say, socialistic programs, I began to realize that the Democratic Party no longer represented what I believed in. So I did change to Republican, and as I matured in my political offices, I became more conservative and believed that lower taxes and smaller government was what would be best for our country.
Yes, we have another question from our chat room. It says, Reaganomics gave us a boom in the 1980s. How did we turn our economy around to reflect those times?
What you're seeing today is a massive governmental structure. Government has become so huge that it is intertwined with all parts of your lives. I still believe that the answer to prosperity is through lower taxation and through giving people the ability to make their own decisions. I think that as long as government growth is the key objective of any administration, that it will be very, very difficult to bring back the prosperity. You are currently going through another period of very high inflation. It is a time that your government has to be very, very careful in what they do. If you generate greater debt, and your debt currently is of a size unimaginable to anyone, then there will be more inflation. The inflation is going to play great damage to people of lower economic status, to the middle class, and to those that need much help. It is going to be very, very difficult for you to turn around some of these trends. I managed to do it when I was in office. So I can assure you that there are people out there that are still capable of doing what is best for your country.
Yes. In 1940, you married the actress Jane Wyman. Would you tell us about your relationship with her?
Jane was a wonderful person. I loved her. She was a wonderful mother and a very good person. We had differences as I wanted to move more into politics. That was not a lifestyle that she truly wanted. So we divorced in 1948, and as it turned out, that was part of my life plan. But Jane was a wonderful person. Her soul is still a wonderful energy. I see her over here, and we are still friends.
In 1949, you met an actress named Nancy Davis. You were married in 1952. Would you tell us about her?
Nancy was truly the love of my life. We were soulmates. I truly loved her. She was my rock, she was my advisor, and she was my friend. We are still together very much over here on the other side. When I became ill with Alzheimer's, she was the rock. She stayed with me, took care of me to the end. And all I can say is she was truly the love of my life.
That's wonderful. Our chat room is filling up with questions. What events took place behind the scene that caused the Soviet Union to collapse?
Gorbachev was actually a person that I could talk to. In the beginning, he was very hardcore, but I managed to bring many resources against him. As I rapidly expanded our military and our nuclear capabilities, he began to realize that the Soviet Union did not have the resources to keep up, and that there might be a point that we would be able to become the aggressor, and that they would surely lose in any type of military action. I assured him that I would do whatever was needed to protect our country. I tried to work through the Pope. We had a good relationship. He would work with his bishops. Many of the countries that were controlled by the Soviet Union at the time had strong Christian ties. We did everything that we could to bring pressure that many of the people did not understand was taking place.
Okay. Let's see. When Medicare was introduced in 1961, you were opposed to it. Why was that?
I was a free market capitalist. By 1961, I felt that large governmental programs would be very detrimental in the long run. Medicare is indeed a very important program today. But because of large government, it has grown almost out of control. And if major steps are not taken in the future, it will go bankrupt. Large governmental projects must be controlled. It is very easy for politicians and individuals to make huge amounts of money by taking advantage of such programs. Safety net programs are a wonderful thing if they are controlled. What is currently taking place is many politicians would rather pursue personal wealth and power than they would by controlling any of these programs. Because as these programs grow, they also grow in their powers.
That's very true. In 1967, you became the governor of California. While governor of California, you signed a pro-abortion bill that would result in over 2 million abortions. Why did you sign the bill?
I consider that bill one of the greatest mistakes that I ever did. I was being pressured to sign the legislation. California was becoming more and more liberal at the time, and a huge percentage of the people believed that abortion should be the choice of the mother. I did sign the bill, and it did have very bad repercussions.
What was your opinion on capital punishment?
I felt that the state should use capital punishment for the most serious offenders. I felt that it was a great deterrent. I now that I'm on the other side have some mixed emotions on the issue because I realize that taking of a life is a very extreme measure.
Yes. In 1967, you signed a law in California that repealed a law allowing the public carrying of loaded firearms. You later became a stronger supporter of the NRA. Will you explain the contradiction, sir?
At the time I signed the bill, there were groups of people carrying loaded weapons into our governmental facilities. And once again, the people of California were asking that we do pass legislation to control such carrying of firearms. I was always a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I felt that the Constitution gave individuals an opportunity to carry firearms as a means of protection. What I did not approve of was people carrying loaded firearms as a way of attempting to influence legislators and to bring fear to others.
Okay, you had a great sign in your office that stated, "There is no limit to what someone can accomplish if they don't care who gets the credit." Was this the basis of how you lived your life?
I tried always to accomplish what I felt was best for others. I didn't always want credit for what we did. I felt that if an individual was truly following the teachings of God, that it was not necessary that they receive credits for their actions. However, I will say that once you enter the political arena, it is very important that people believe that your actions are providing for them and that you, as a politician, are the ones that are the driving force behind legislation that is best for them. But I think that humility is a wonderful thing. And there are many people that help others and do not want credit for it. Whenever possible, I think that being anonymous in the good things that you do is often a very good thing. Okay, let's take a small break here, and we will be back in about 3 minutes, and we'll have a bunch more questions.
Don't go away. Channeling History will return right after these brief messages.
In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. Tune in every Monday at 10 o'clock. The Dark Sun Rising on the Para-X Radio Network. From Haunted Road Media comes an exciting new novel by author Marla Brooks. Soul Connection, a deadly obsession. Two lost souls ripped apart by murder in another century find each other again in the present, only to discover that the murderer has followed them through time. Can their love save them, or will history repeat itself? Find out in this captivating new novel by Marla Brooks, Soul Connection, a deadly obsession. Available now on Amazon.com and at BarnesandNoble.com.
You've no doubt heard of Tango and Cash, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Perhaps it takes two to tango. Well, now, on the first and third Thursdays of each month, there's a show called Tango and Friends at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Para-X Radio Network with your host, Bruce Tango. And yes, there will be at least two to tango on each episode, sometimes even more. There's going to be lots of topics and lots of guests you'll all know and lots of surprises. Tango and Friends every first and third Thursday of the month at 8 p.m. right here on the Para-X Radio Network. Have you ever wondered what Jesus and his followers would say if you could receive their messages today? In his new book, Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits, channeler and author Barry Strohm answers those questions for you. Using his gift of spirit communication, he brings you messages from such Holy Spirits as Moses, John the Baptist, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Jesus, and even Mother Teresa and the Reverend Billy Graham. They discuss topics that are important for contemporary life in these troubled times. Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other booksellers. Signed copies are available on the author's website, spiritspredict.com. After reading this book, you will never again say, "What would Jesus say or do?" Welcome back to Channeling History. Now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Connie, got a lot more questions and not much time. Let's do it.
Yeah, we got more questions than time. Let me start with one off the chat room. Did you feel the removal of the wall was one of your greatest achievements? Did this political act cause more strife than was thought originally, or did it really help?
The removal of the wall in Germany was a very, very good thing. It did create problems at the time when Gorbachev decided to allow freedoms for the people. There was a great period of adjustment for them because they were not used to a free market system. But the removal of the wall was a great symbolic thing for our administration.
Okay. What role did your relationship with the Pope play in the collapse of the Iron Curtain?
The Pope tried to work through the Catholic religious organizations to provide support for attempting to overthrow the Soviet iron rule that was present. Especially the Polish people were big helps in this. They had deep Christian roots, as I mentioned before. But the Pope was very, very helpful behind the scenes in many of the things that we were trying to do.
What is your opinion of the Jimmy Carter presidency?
I think that Jimmy Carter was a very, very good person. But some of his ideas and concepts of governing were not effective for the American people. He was perceived as being very weak in foreign policy, and that is why the Iranians felt that they could hold the hostages for as long as they did. I think that he meant well, but I think that he had a terrible administration and terrible advisors. As you could tell from the election results, the American people felt the same way.
Yeah. Had Iran not released the hostages once you became president, what actions would you have taken?
I had informed the Iranian government that when I took over, that I would do everything in my power to totally destroy the Iranian economy and to assure that their administration and government would be overthrown. They realized that I meant what I said, and thankfully they released the hostages immediately upon my inauguration.
I remember that day well. Did Nancy have an advanced warning of your shooting through her astrology connections?
Nancy said that she felt that there was going to be some act of violence against me. But as a president, you're always aware that there's a strong possibility that some fool is going to try to take your life. Nancy did truly believe in astrology, just the same as I believed that there were certain connections that were beyond human understanding.
Did you ever use astrology to make decisions as president?
I would try to back up my decisions. We would try to do things when we felt that the time was right, and we would attempt to do things when the stars would truly align. If, for instance, we felt that the better decision would be made in a couple months, we would delay those decisions.
Did you yourself have any psychic abilities?
No. I would have dreams, which possibly the guides were trying to give me information, but I never had any true psychic abilities.
At the time you were sworn in as president, you were 70 years old. What effect did your age have on you as president?
The job of president is totally exhausting. You do not understand just how many pressures are upon you until you truly have the job. I was 70 and of pretty good health. I had had some things wrong with me through the years, but as I was in the presidency and as my age increased, I could tell that I no longer had the amount of energy that I had in the beginning. I was starting to physically weaken from all the pressures that were on me. I do feel that the job can be better done with a younger person, but if an individual has a lot of energy and strength and sharp mental abilities, I do not think that 70 is too old, but I would caution that no matter what an individual thinks of his abilities, the incredible pressure of being president will take a great physical toll.
As you watch from the other side, do you see any signs of physical or mental comprehension problems for our current President Biden?
I think that President Biden is simply reflecting the effects of the pressures that are put upon him. This is a very, very complicated time to govern your country. You must trust your advisors, and you must be able to determine what is truly best for the decisions that you make. I think that he is being pulled in many, many directions. And I do think that you are seeing some problems as a result of his age. I do think that as his presidency continues, you will see more and more effects.
Yeah, I have a quick question from the chat room. When you were president, were you told about the presence of aliens? And if so, why didn't you tell the public?
All of the presidents are aware of the presence of aliens or extraterrestrials. This has been going on for a long time, and the extraterrestrials have requested that their presence be kept a secret for the time being. There will be a time in the very, very near future where there will be full disclosure. We had a long-term agreement with the extraterrestrials not to disclose their presence, and I felt that I was required to keep that agreement.
Yeah. Getting back to the Alzheimer's type stuff, were you affected by that coming to the end of your presidency?
I don't think that I was truly affected by the Alzheimer's portion. I was having some problems with short-term memory, but I attribute that simply to the fact that I was getting older. I think that everyone has some memory problems as they age, but I do not think that the disease ever affected my presidency.
Okay, you fought Alzheimer's for nearly 10 years. What was it like for you personally to fight such a horrible disease?
At first, it is very, very difficult to believe what is taking place to you. It is almost like a slow cancer that takes over your body. You start to realize that you do not know people's names, and people will come to you and you do not recognize their faces. It is especially difficult for a person such as myself that had such a important job of such responsibility. As the disease progresses, you simply learn that your capabilities are coming to an end. It is not painful to you personally as you advance, because your mind just simply doesn't acknowledge the fact of what is taking place. So in the beginning, it is a disaster. But as you lose your facilities, it has much less of an impact on you personally.
Did you have any knowledge of the Iran-Contra affair?
I had heard rumors, but I specifically informed my advisors not to make any mention of what was taking place in my presence. So I did not know the details because I had given them specific orders.
During the Cold War with Russia, you pursued a policy of assured mutual destruction. Do you think that's the best policy today?
The weapons and delivery capabilities have so increased since my time. It is now possible that a country can think that they could have first strike abilities and win such a confrontation. I think that the world has got to understand that the United States has the most destructive military ability in the world. As long as they can guarantee that, I think that that is the best policy.
Yeah. What is your opinion about modern China as an adversary of the United States?
China is the true long-term enemy of the United States. They are determined that they're going to overtake the economy. They're doing many, many things in the background to assure that they will have the ability to do many things internally in our country. They currently are having a great effect on the technological advances that are being made. They have spies everywhere that they are aware of what we are doing. I think it takes a concerted effort to move against China at this time. They are the most dangerous adversary, and their plan is laid out over a 30 or 50 year span. Our country tends to plan in the short run. If China is not addressed, they truly could undermine the United States.
Yes, we've been warned about that from others on your side. What is your opinion of Mikhail Gorbachev?
I actually got along pretty well with Mikhail. He understood, I think, that in the long term the Soviet Union could not prevail against the economic might of the United States. I see him over here and we are still quite friendly. He actually did a lot for the Soviet people. The Soviets criticized him heavily, but I think that he did what was best.
So when did you realize that it was inevitable that the Soviet Union was going to fail?
I believed very early in my administration as president, when I truly understood the power and strength of our government, that there was no way that they could prevail in the long run. I did a lot to advance our military, and I did many things in our space program. I think they understood that he simply did not have the ability to withstand the type of competition that we were putting upon them for the long run.
In 1986, you signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act, which granted amnesty to approximately 3 million illegal immigrants. What is your current opinion of you signing that act?
My advisors assured me that if we did this, if we gave the immigrants amnesty, that we would stop the flow of illegal immigration. I signed a bill believing that what they were telling me was true. Sadly, it had almost no effect, and all we did was give amnesty and allow people to jump in front of the lines for around 3 million plus people. I wish that I had never signed the act.
What's your opinion of what's happening with immigration today?
Immigration is truly a disgrace. We now have open borders. Our country has limited resources. Our government can take in only so many funds, and there is just so much that you can do in building up the national debt. I believe in legal immigration. We need legal immigration. But we are bringing in people with low earning abilities that are going to be an incredible weight upon our nation. I wish that the political parties could get together and understand that this can be but another way that our country is being undermined.
For sure. In 1981, John Hinckley Jr. attempted to take your life. What do you think of the fact that he has just been paroled?
I do not personally think he should have been paroled. I know that they say that he had mental problems, but I think when you attempt to take the life of an American president, that you should know that you are committed to spend the rest of your life in prison.
Was there any deeper conspiracy involved with the Hinckley attempt on your life?
There were others involved that were prompting Hinckley to do this. They were encouraging him. But there was no great conspiracy as there was in the killing of JFK.
Okay, you attempted to nominate Robert Bork to the Supreme Court. The nomination set off a firestorm of opposition by civil and women rights groups, as well as Senate Democrats. Why did you nominate Mr. Bork?
I nominated him because I thought he was best for the position. I wanted to assure that there would be a nomination that would be a truly conservative justice. Robert Bork was an incredibly intelligent individual. He did fight as best he could, but the firestorm just overcame him, and it became apparent that they would do anything to stop his nomination.
And you appointed the first woman to the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor. What is your opinion of the Supreme Court today?
I think that you actually have a pretty good balance in the Supreme Court today. I do not believe that the court, if it's going to function in the manner that the founders of our country contemplated, I do not believe that the court should represent a single political party or a single belief. I think that there's actually a good balance. You have extremes on both sides. Out of extremes on both sides, they do a pretty good job of compromise. I think that a small conservative majority is a good thing. I generally think that the Supreme Court does a really good job, and I strongly feel that any attempts to increase the size of the Supreme Court would be a fool's errand.
Agree with you on that. During your term as president, the news media was not very kind to you. What is your opinion of the news media today?
Sadly, the news media brings much propaganda to the people. The vast majority of people are listening to what they say. Now, I will point out that many are now understanding that they're being misled. Some of the things that they have said in the past 4 or 5 years have been so extreme that individuals are starting to truly understand that in many instances the media is just an extension of a political party. Our founding fathers wanted our media to be neutral, and it is far from it today.
Yeah. You initiated the Strategic Defense Initiative, sometimes referred to as Star Wars, to develop space-based weapons and to protect the United States from nuclear missiles. What do you think about the current ability for the United States to protect itself from a nuclear attack?
I think that technology is at a point that no nation can protect itself totally from nuclear attack. I think that you can stop a portion of an attack, but I know of no technology that is going to be 100% effective at this time. I would recommend that the countries of the world get together and determine that the only way to coexist is to lower the number of nuclear weapons that all countries currently hold.
Okay. While you were a proponent of smaller government and lower taxes, your economic policies did result in a rising budget deficit. Do you think there's any economic policy in our modern economy that can bring budget stability to our country?
I do think that you can bring budget stability, but you can never do it with the size of your current government. If you want such stability, you're going to have to reduce the size of government, and you're going to have to sort out important expenditures versus the waste and corruption that you currently see in your budgets.
What do you consider the greatest danger to our country?
I think that the greatest danger to our country is the undermining of the pride that individuals hold for our country. The United States is the greatest country on earth, and I will always believe that. Many people think that our country is a terrible country with a terrible history. What they need to do is consider the history of other countries, and they will find that perhaps our past history is not as bad as some of the others.
Do you think the United States will be able to survive?
I think that the United States can survive if they return to the teachings of God and the principles of our founding fathers. If they continue to run these incredible deficits, then the country will not survive.
What do you think of our current Democrat and Republican parties?
I think that there are problems with both of them. I think that the Democrats becoming more and more liberal or socialist is a grave danger. I think that the Republican Party has extreme members on their side as well. The parties need to be able to negotiate, compromise, and do what is best for the people.
So my next question was, what advice would you give our current politicians? And I believe you just did. I hope they listened to you. Are you planning to reincarnate anytime soon, Mr. President?
It is a distinct possibility. I'm thinking that in the near future, politicians have got to believe that the United States is the strongest and best answer to be leaders of the free world, and hopefully there will be more and more countries that take an interest in freedom and in following basic religious principles.
Okay, we're about at the end here. I apologize to our listeners who put in some very good questions tonight, but once again, we ran out of time. Perhaps Mr. President will come back with us another time. So, Mr. President, do you have a final message for our listeners?
Yes. I want to thank you for having me, but I want everyone listening to believe that the United States is one of the finest countries in the world. While there have been problems with some of the history, the United States has done much. They basically saved the world during World War II. They provide technologies. They do so many things. The United States is the largest political organization to help others in the world. When there are problems, people look to the United States. I wish that all would take pride in their country. There are many, many other good countries. Great Britain, France, Germany, all have advantages. But all must realize that they have to fight socialism, they have to fight communism, and they have to give individual rights, and they have to believe that all religions are protected and that freedom of religion is one of the basic things in the founding and in allowing the country to continue on its important path. So thank you. If you wish me to come back sometime, I would be happy to do so.
I think our listeners were happy to hear that, sir. Thank you so much for being with us. And I hope that a lot of people listening, because you had some wonderful advice.
Okay, next week we're going to be doing a bit of a change of pace, and we're going to interview the spirit of Michael Jackson, the famous entertainer. And we're going to be asking some very, very direct questions of him. A new book, Spirit Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirit's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Now we have just lowered the Kindle price on the book to $2.99 so that everybody can take advantage of reading the book and of learning of the great information that's in it. All of our information, or all of our shows and channelings, are available on our YouTube channel. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Thank you for listening. And please join us at Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the Para-X Radio Network.
Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and God bless you all.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.